Hi guys, and welcome to the Seller Board Show. My name is Vladdy Gordon. My today's guest is Chris McCabe from e-commerce Chris. So Chris used to work at Amazon on the seller performance team. And if you don't know what the seller performance team is, then you're probably very lucky, because this is the team which is basically getting involved uh, if um, if sellers have any problems, right? Or if Amazon thinks that the seller has any problems. So suspensions and reinstatements and listing suspensions and yeah, all other kind of issues that you probably don't want to deal with, right? This is what the seller performance is doing. And for us, it's of course very valuable to understand how this team works from the inside, what they're thinking about and what's important to them. And this is what basically Chris shared today. So we talked about the most common and most important suspension reasons, and Chris gave us a couple of tips how to avoid them and what to do if you are getting suspended or if one of your listings got suspended. So this is going to be very interesting. Make sure you press the like button and make sure you subscribe to our channel. We're releasing these interviews regularly, so stay tuned. Now, before we start the show, sellerboard.com is our profit analytics service for Amazon sellers, and our vision is to be the world's most accurate and most user-friendly and intuitive tool at a very competitive price. So sellerboard subscription starts at $19 a month. You can get a 1 month free trial if you follow the link below this description, below this video. And there's a ton of other tools in the package, like the inventory manager, which will send you reorder or restock alerts, or like a money back module, which helps you find cases where Amazon owes you money for damaged or lost goods, a PPC dashboard for PPC profitability and optimization, and a lot of other stuff. So check out our homepage. And now let's start the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Seller Board Show. My name is Vladdy, and today I have Chris McCabe with me from ecommercechris.com. Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing great, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. Hectic time of year, but everybody has peak holiday on their minds right now, so it's good to be talking to you.
Cool, thanks for coming. So, Chris, tell us about yourself.
Worked at Amazon for 5.5, 6 years on performance and policy teams, and now I'm over 5 years in as a consultant for sellers who get their accounts suspended or their ASINs taken down. We help people deal with policy warnings and help them correspond with my former teams, more or less.
So. Very cool. So actually, I think it's the first time we have somebody who used to work at Amazon on our podcast. So tell me, like, how is it like? How is working at Amazon?
You know, it was a little bit different when I was there. It's changed a lot. It's always been a kind of a high pressure environment, but now they're really pressuring people to complete work quickly and not necessarily double checking the quality of the work. There was a lot more emphasis on quality when I was there. Now they're encouraging investigators to rush reviews of accounts. Unfortunately, it's resulting in a lot of mistakes being made and just kind of a disorganized way of looking at account annotations, looking at how they want sellers to correspond with them and behave. I think Amazon changes their mind a lot.
Okay.
And there's a lot of inconsistency. So
okay, that doesn't sound good for sellers.
I think it's getting tougher for sellers to communicate with my former teams. I think we had more of an emphasis on 5 or 6 years ago.
So we know about this performance team because it looks like these are the guys who are deciding basically about like a suspension or a release. But tell us, like, how is it basically working? Like, I also know these are the guys that you can never talk to on the phone. So if you call support, you never talk to the performance team. So what is the work like, and how, like, what are they doing the whole day basically?
They're reading a lot of appeals all day.
Mm-hmm.
They're opening up a lot of attachments, everything you would expect them to look at when you send them something, like an
Mm-hmm.
appeal for an account,
Mm-hmm.
reinstatement. But they're encouraged to do it very quickly, and they're punished for moving too slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's not a lot of auditing of investigation quality
Mm-hmm.
anymore,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not consistent enough. So they're rushing through the work, but they're not necessarily being reprimanded for making mistakes. There's a lot of mistakes. I've never seen this many mistakes in the
Mm-hmm.
last 10 or 11 or 12 years. I mean, there's probably more mistakes being made now than ever from what I've seen.
Wow.
So it's an environment where they don't have a lot of, I mean, to defend the investigators, they don't necessarily have a lot of great training.
Mm-hmm.
They probably don't have a lot of productive coaching in terms of somebody who's experienced, who's a veteran, pointing out. And then beyond that, the environment is just pedal to the floor all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really have a moment to step back and fix something that breaks. You just try to patch it together and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, make the machine keep running. I don't think they've figured out how to do that efficiently just yet.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow.
Mhm.
Look, so I've been a seller myself previously, and I know, and also from our clients, that it's a nightmare if your
Yeah.
account gets suspended or if a listing gets blocked. Especially now, we're now in December
Yeah.
2019. It's Christmas time, so if something like this happens before Christmas, it can really cost you like your business. So,
Hmm.
um, and I know you're helping sellers resolve those cases. And you prepared a list of
Yeah.
most common problems, right? And suspension reasons and so on. So yeah, we'd like to discuss this list and share basically these
Mhm.
problems and maybe talk about solutions today. Yeah, let's walk through this list. Tell us what have you got? What's the most like common problem that you're
Right.
seeing lately?
So I didn't create a chronology or a hierarchy of
Mm-hmm.
these. I picked the five most common.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, anything around rights ownership is
Mm-hmm.
key. Anyone who has a private label brand should be
Mm-hmm.
registering a trademark and doing brand registry and getting that all set up before you even start to
Mm-hmm.
sell. I know there's some sellers contacting me who say that they don't necessarily want to trademark everything. They might want to launch a product and test it.
Yeah.
And they started as a generic listing, and then maybe they'll add branding information later. On paper, that seems like a good idea, but in practice, it's not a very good idea. Somebody else will register that trademark. Somebody might accuse you of selling counterfeit products because you haven't registered the brand. You won't have the access to brand registry if you haven't trademark registered.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm encouraging everyone to do as much prep as possible before they even start.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they might get a patent complaint. Somebody says you've infringed upon our patent rights. Um, and I'm not a rights ownership expert in terms of the law. I'm not an
Mm-hmm.
attorney,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm an expert on the notice processes built around protecting rights ownership and
Mm-hmm.
warning people, deleting listings, punishing people for infringing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is that a lot of sellers don't understand rights ownership, whether they're resellers or private label, on top of the fact that they don't understand how Amazon needs to protect against their own liability.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to make sure that they're not constantly getting in between brands and resellers, for example. So they have certain rules they put into place,
Mm-hmm.
certain policies to protect them, right? So it's not so much resellers or other sellers that you have to worry about. Sometimes it's you have to worry about Amazon's disinterest in dealing with your rights ownership issues. If you've
Mm-hmm.
set things if you've set things up the right way, then maybe you're not so much of a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to warn you for things, and you're not vulnerable to attack against your brand. If you don't set things up the right way, if you hire the wrong attorney, these are big mistakes that can really ruin your business down the road, if not right away. So I've been encouraging everyone to study rights ownership issues,
Mm-hmm.
know what trademarks are, know what patent is, don't assume you know these things, understand what copyright is. I had to do it too. I wasn't an expert in the law until
Mm-hmm.
I had to master these issues myself. So
So it looks like a great idea, of course, and I think to me, it was also pretty intuitive that you should do the trademark first. But on the
Mhm.
other hand, as I said, a lot of sellers are starting without, because you don't know if the product will work, or if the brand
Right.
will work, if it's worth the effort, right? You want to start and test quickly and fail quickly, right? So
Mhm.
what might happen in worst case if we don't have a trademark registered and no
You're
brand registry?
vulnerable. Yeah. You're vulnerable to attack. I mean, anti-competitive attacks are commonplace. They happen all the time. I talk to people every day about this. So you're just
Hmm.
leaving yourself vulnerable to attack from another seller. And
Hmm.
sellers over the last year or so have really perfected ways of attacking brands in
And,
ways
and
that Amazon won't help you sort out, right?
and what's that? Is
So
like piggybacking on my listing, or do they like open a case against myself, or
they could submit an infringement claim against you saying that they've registered the trademark and you haven't. They've
hmm
got the trademark, you're infringing on them, even if it's your
hmm
product and
hmm
they're reselling it.
wow.
Some of these things can be worked out
Hmm.
after the fact, but it creates a big mess.
Hmm.
When you have the brand behind you, when you register the brand, you have the law behind you. You've got a trademark. You've got a lot more weaponry to fight back.
Yeah.
Copyrighted images, obviously, you need to you can't borrow images from somewhere
hmm
else and use them as your own.
hmm
When it comes to something like patent law, obviously, you have to understand before you design something whether or not you're borrowing or you're too similar to somebody else's patent,
hmm
and that should be just as important as testing a product to see how well it's going to sell. I think this is kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. They don't think about these things until they're getting attacked.
hmm
And I've just seen a lot of sellers make mistakes. They start Googling attorneys and they get the one with the biggest ad or the one with
hmm
the best name recognition. It might be the worst attorney out there, but they don't have time to research it the way they
Yeah.
could before they start.
So,
Um,
for somebody who has a product without the trademark registered and brand registry, um, is it but which is already selling basically? Yeah.
right.
Is it possible to do it like after the fact, after you launched, basically register a brand and then apply for the brand
People
registry?
do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, people do it. People register the trademark afterwards.
Hmm.
It's just that the game has changed and you're much more vulnerable now. You don't have as much runway, as much
Hmm.
time to do that now. Anything that sells at all will be attracting attention.
Hmm.
And if they realize there's no registered trademark, they really haven't protected yourself with proper rights ownership steps and measures, then they know you're vulnerable and they know you're selling something successfully and they know that you're vulnerable. So
Hmm.
they're going to try to take some of that revenue away from you. And you're making
Okay.
it easy. You're making it easy for them to do it. And I guess I only bring it up because these things can be avoided if you
Hmm.
prepare enough and if you research enough in advance instead of just plunging in.
Yeah.
So,
Got it. Very cool. So
right,
register your trademark, guys, as early as
right.
possible.
All intellectual property, I would study each facet. Any copyright, trademark, or other intellectual property issues that could come up while you're selling your own products to protect yourself and your brand. So
Got it.
that's kind of my number one. I mean,
Hmm.
around that, we also have a lot of people who are getting complaints about safety, either authenticity or safety. Those are the two biggest concerns Amazon has.
Hmm.
Will somebody complain that your products aren't authentic, aren't genuine, or will they
hmm
say that they're unsafe and they're a hazard? And
hmm
there's a variety of different hazards, right? Electronics are different from supplements or something consumable.
hmm
But at this point, Amazon's concerned about any safety complaint,
hmm
any pattern of safety issues. So whether and recently you've probably talked to people about the rise in expired items, right? They've been
hmm
pushing a big focus on expired. So I'm just encouraging people to do as much quality control as possible. And if they get a complaint from a buyer, to really listen and really research it instead of just saying, they don't want to return it and have to pay for the return shipping. I mean, listen and
hmm
research it to see if there's an actual complaint there that you might get again that you
So,
can prevent.
what should somebody do if you get a run into a problem with like you get an unauthentic ban, basically? So,
Yeah.
what what should somebody do? I mean, of course, if Amazon is true, then if it's right that you're selling an authentic product, then it's a different path. Maybe we don't
Right.
need to discuss it here. But let's suppose you're
Mhm.
doing everything correctly, and then you're getting this
Right.
ban. Like,
And yeah.
what do you do then? And first of all, why does it even happen? Like, is it a mistake?
Well, let's forget. Sometimes it's a mistake. Sometimes they're interpreting a buyer complaint the wrong way. But let's forget the word inauthentic for a moment and just think about item quality. Whether it's a safety complaint or somebody says these are fake, these aren't genuine, and you only make your own products. Obviously, they just mean they don't like the quality of the item or the condition. It could be a condition. So my first recommendation is to pull some inventory out of FBA and open up some boxes and start looking at what you think they're looking at. What are they complaining about? You're supposed to be an expert in your own product. If your quality control isn't substantial enough, then maybe you've got a problem at the factory level that you have to deal with. I've talked to many sellers who their factory in China started swapping out cheaper materials and they didn't know about it right away. I've heard thousands of these stories over the years. You have to watch this stuff all the time. Amazon doesn't want you shipping straight to FBA without having any idea if the items listed on their site are the same quality. It sounds basic and fundamental to say these things, but in reality, a lot of people over time stop inspecting as much and they stop going to check the factory. They stop opening boxes so much.
Yeah.
So I recommend continuing those practices, not just your first month of a product launch, but ongoing and maintaining that compliance or inspection process throughout your sales and your shipments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And like, what do you do if this happened? Like, do you just answer the complaint, or I don't know, they mostly want an action plan, or what's your
mostly
advice
they
on that?
want a plan of action. It starts typically with an ASIN is taken away. It might be your top selling ASIN. So losing a good selling successful ASIN might be the same as an account suspension to some people. And the process is the same for a plan of action. They typically want supply chain documentation, but they want you to prove to them, convince them that you're not going to run into this again. That your due diligence, essentially a plan of action, is convincing them with due diligence improvements that you can be trusted to sell those products again.
Yeah.
And if your whole account is down, that you can be trusted to sell at all.
Yeah.
So why are they so tough on people? It's because they're afraid that if you don't make enough improvements, that 30 days from now you'll be facing the same complaints and they'll have to review you again. And if they don't suspend you then, they're going to have to look again in 30 days and then suspend you then, and it's an endless cycle. They're trying to break the cycle. That's why suspensions are so easy to come by.
Okay, and like, is there a chance for a seller to win such a case? I mean, it's I don't know, how will they actually ever inspect the physical products themselves, or is it just a communication which is going on there?
You have to give specifics. You have to, and Amazon started asking for better details because sellers weren't giving them details. They were making promises. A plan of action isn't just a list of promises. I still see those. It's a list of action items, but specifically, why will those help? Why are those convincing? Why should Amazon give you another chance based on those steps? Well, they're only going to give you another chance if they believe that those steps will remedy the problem and prevent it for the future. So if you can't convince them of that, then they're going to keep asking you for more. I mean, these are fixable problems. Most account suspensions can be resolved positively. And I think some sellers got the impression that account reinstatement is going to be impossible to do because they're not sending a good plan of action and they think it's good. And maybe they show it to a seller friend and that person thinks it's good.
Yeah.
But show it to somebody who understands it. I mean, that's why I'm usually in favor of, if not somebody that worked on my former teams, I mean, somebody worked at the company, because there's a lot of people out there advertising themselves as experts, right? There's a lot of self-promotion in the Amazon space. So you got to be careful of deciding that the plan of action you sent in is really good. Don't assume it's good. If it's not good, then they're not going to read it.
So but tell me, Chris, is it like let's say, for example, we're talking about authenticity, or we have a customer complaint, like a seller performance team member, will they actually go out and go to the warehouse and pick the product? So it's only like a digital communication, which is gone.
It seems like it's just a fantasy that you're promising things and no one actually checks it.
Mhm.
But if you continue to have this, if you're reinstated and you continue to have the same problems, they just shut you back down.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's
right?
not just completely virtual because they get the KPIs, but I mean, the process is there's nothing like physical going on there. So you as a seller, you have more or less the same
You're
numbers.
doing the physical part. You're doing the inspections. You're pulling inventory. You're doing all the physical running around, and then based on your research and results, you're composing the plan to petition for another chance to sell. You have to understand, as a seller, almost every item that exists is available on Amazon now. And someday in the future, Amazon will have their own basic brand for anything that exists. Not today and not this year, but so you have to think in terms of you've got competition and you're not necessarily irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Whatever your brand is, you might be replaceable by another seller tomorrow. So I'm not saying that to scare people. It's just a reality. And I don't think people should hide from that reality and just, blame Amazon for being too tough on them. Amazon's always going to be tough on people. That's not going to change. So you have to kind of rise to their level and up your game, as opposed to, complaining that the process is unfair.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't help otherwise. All right, cool. So what's number 3?
So another one is we've seen a lot of listing compliance suspensions. This comes up a lot with ACE variations. I've done a couple of interviews and videos on this with a colleague of mine, Leah McCabe. Most sellers that get suspended for this tell us that their flat files are correct, or they don't even have flat files, but their listings are correct. 90-something% of them aren't doing it correctly. They think they are doing it correctly, but they're not. So I've been concerned that there's a gap between what's being done and what's accurate or correct. Amazon has filled that gap by suspending people for things that they didn't used to suspend for. They used to send warnings, right? They would give you a list of ASINs and say, we've corrected these detail pages. And you might get 4 or 5 of those warnings. I don't know how many. Now maybe you get 1, or if they think it's chronic, they just take your account away. So variations, understanding variation themes, obviously it depends on what you're selling and what category. The rules are different depending on where you are, but it's essential to have staff or somebody who understands listing compliance. You're not creating duplicates. You're not making mistakes with variations. You're not adding seller specific information to a listing, which would exclude another seller from selling the product. 100% guaranteed. Anything seller specific, money back guarantee. There's tons of examples, but unfortunately, we're still seeing sellers filling their listings and their titles with incorrect information. That's a kind of a one-way ticket to an account suspension, and that's very avoidable. You don't need to go through the pain of a suspension if you understand listing compliance.
You mentioned money back guarantee. Does it mean like you're not allowed to mention the money back guarantee in the listing?
You can't put anything in a listing that's not going to apply to any other seller who joins that listing. Doesn't matter if you're private label or not. It's an open marketplace. So somebody else who's selling your products, at least in theory, selling your products, can't join a listing that excludes them because they can't offer. It's the same product, but they can't offer what you offer. That's a misuse of product detail page content. And so sellers get suspended for that all the time now.
Wow. And what if, so there are like
promotional content. I mean, there's a lot of things added to listings that don't belong there. So,
I mean, I've seen some listings as a buyer on Amazon where you're like shopping for, I don't know, maybe for headphones. And then you notice that some reviews apply to a phone case, right? Because phone case used to be a variant of this product, or maybe it still is, right?
Merges, you mean improper merges of ASINs? That's kind of a different problem. Anyone who's left doing that, I'm sure there are people, maybe people who are watching this who are still merging ASINs and trying to get, improve their reviews based on that practice. But I've worked on a lot of account suspensions for that. So if you're doing that still, word is kind of out, let me know. Policy teams are kind of all over this. So don't expect to sell very long if you're still merging ASINs improperly.
Wow. Okay, very cool.
Reviews. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So okay, we've got listing compliance. All right, I get it. It's something different and merging, but still important. I didn't really think of it that way.
Right. I mean, to be fair, people are still doing a lot of these practices, just like with product reviews is the next one I was going to bring up. Plenty of sellers are still asking for reviews the wrong way, promising a free product. They don't ask for positive review anymore. Nobody does that, but they find other ways to work around it.
Yeah.
So maybe you have a gift card, maybe you have a rebate at the end of the process, maybe you have a free gift or just heavily discounted product down the road. I mean, that all induces positive reviews. People are still doing these things.
Yeah.
Even though every few months there's a mass purge where thousands of sellers are suspended for these practices. People are still watching YouTube videos from gurus who don't talk about compliance at all, who don't care how many people get suspended. I mean, that happens every day.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
product reviews, product inserts, people are still violating policy with inserts that encourage positive reviews or ask for 5-star reviews. They think no one's ever going to see it, I guess. But
how is this actually being how does Amazon find out that there's an insert? Do they go ahead and open a box?
Okay. Usually it's a buyer reports you because they don't like finding that in the box, or your competitor buys from you and reports it. They do a test buy. That's a valid, even if it's from a competitor, that's a valid complaint.
Yeah. Okay.
And they just take a picture, a screenshot of the card itself, front and back. Sellers were doing things like making inserts. One side would say, "Are you unhappy with anything, our service, the product, whatever, contact us." And then the other side would say, "Are you happy? Leave a review." That's a violation. People were getting suspended for that in droves. And if you've got product inserts already, you can't just pull everything out of FBA overnight. I mean, it's there. Anyone who wants to open up a box can look in there and find it. So,
okay, cool. So what's the next one?
Strategy. And the other thing I want to say about product reviews is just how the messaging, post-order messaging you send to people. You can't try to lead them in a direction where they're going to leave you a positive review. You can't try to guilt them into leaving you a nice review.
Yeah.
Make them feel sorry for you or tell them how small of a business you are. Or you have to be very careful. The language has to be neutral when you request a review. So it's just a reminder for people.
You mean like an email which sellers sent to buyers after an order, like
right. Post-order messaging, you're reaching out to buyers. You can still do that. You can ask for a review. No one's saying you can't. But if you do it in a way that twists their arm a little bit in the direction, I believe it's a nice review, Amazon doesn't really tolerate that anymore. Amazon's under a lot of pressure to clean up the review space and to make reviews legitimate. Otherwise, product reviews on Amazon won't have integrity anymore, and no one will trust any of them. That's Amazon's biggest fear. And we're already kind of on the way there. So
cool. So what's the next point, or is it all?
Yeah, this one's a little tougher to solve. It's code of conduct suspensions, code of conduct violations. I don't know if you've heard much about those.
No.
That's almost where they're telling you that you're acting in bad faith and they can't trust you with your account. You're either messaging other sellers and threatening them and trying to get them to get off a listing or to change their behavior. Sometimes it's just sending them fake infringement claims just to get them off your listing. Or buyers, sending messages to buyers, sending too many messages, refusing to refund them when they want to return something. Any kind of inappropriate contact. I mean, usually with what I do, I hear more about it between sellers, not so much seller and buyer. But if Amazon thinks you're a pain in the neck and they're going to get reports that you're acting badly, you're behaving badly, they're going to get rid of you. I've talked to some sellers that sold 10, 20, 30 million a year who lost their accounts because they were behaving badly. So Amazon's obviously serious. And they created a whole kind of suspension around this called code of conduct. So typically you get a list of actions. They don't necessarily say you were doing this one, you weren't doing this one, you were doing this one. They leave it up to you to decide which ones you were doing.
Yeah.
But for example, people who are like faking their invoices, they don't have any invoices, so they just make them up.
Yeah.
Or they Photoshop something or they fake an invoice. That's considered code of conduct. The big problem is if you're guilty of that, they take your account away, you might not get it back, and then some people aren't getting their money after 90 days. So it's kind of like having like a fraud action taken on your account. That's a heavier duty problem.
So is there a chance, like what if it happens without any reason, or what if you think that you've done everything right? And
we've gotten people reinstated who were falsely accused of these things. We've worked on suspensions for fabricated invoices or manipulated supply chain documentation where they weren't doing anything. It was incorrect. The investigator made a mistake. That's why Amazon has, as part of their messaging, if this happened, an error, explain what the error is. And we've been able to resolve it in some cases when they weren't actually doing things. If you come back and say we didn't do any of these things and there's proof that you did, then you can't expect to get your account back. They think coming off of a suspension from doing terrible things and then you're lying about doing terrible things. They're not interested in that, right? So that's kind of, those are the small handful of, again, outside of condition complaints, if you have a lot of items that are damaged in transit or defective, of course, you'll eventually get buyer complaints and be suspended. These are kind of the other cases that we see that might be a little tougher to resolve, a little bit less straightforward.
Wow, very cool. So do you have any other points on your list, or?
For suspension types, no. I was going to ask you. You're more familiar with your audience than I am, so I'm wondering what you have seen in terms of trends or complaints from people from your audience.
I think we're not experts in reinstatement and in suspension. So like our focus is the numbers, right?
Right.
So now and then somebody writes, okay, the account was banned, so they want to cancel the subscription, right?
Right.
So I think I'm not the right person, because sure, we have heard all those names, and we're talking about the sellers and like inauthentic or the safety, for example, for sure.
Well, even ASINs. I mean, almost every seller I talk to has at one point lost an ASIN. Maybe not their whole account, but they've had an ASIN suspended. That happens very easily now.
Yeah. Look, tell us if somebody has a problem and would like to use your help. How are you working with the sellers?
We usually start with either by email or phone. We're getting information. Why were you suspended? What did Amazon send you? I try to figure out if they've researched the causes at all, and if they've maybe had an honest conversation with themselves about the possible reasons why Amazon's punishing them or suspending them. Our primary role is to help them appeal. So we're helping them with the plan of action, right? We get at the heart of the root causes. Sellers writing the root causes often just write the causes. We're suspended for inauthentic, we're suspended for product review abuse, but they don't get into the details in the background of why they were breaking the rules, why they were committing violations. So we kind of clear away it's a one-page document or a page and a half. So you have to clear away all the extra text, all the extra comments that don't relate to your situation, and talk primarily about the root causes behind the suspension. But then how did you maybe you created the mess and what mistakes you made. Well, how did you clean up the mess? That's the second section of a POA, resolving the dispute, the complaints. The third part is future prevention, which is the biggest piece to them. They want to know how you can convince them that you won't be back in the same situation again. So we're helping them with all facets of the plan of action. Obviously, if they get a reply that says we need more than this, or they don't get a response, or they get a negative response, and we know the plan of action is viable and solid, then we help them escalate it. So that's something we know more about than anyone else out there, because obviously we worked on those teams ourselves and we used to read seller escalations. So we understand that the different paths and channels you need to go down with your plan of action. Once you have it ignored by Amazon or not properly reviewed, then we know how to take it to other teams and get it reviewed properly.
Cool. So basically, you'll help write this plan of action and also formulate the whole texts and or mails that you send to Amazon, and you'll guide the seller and help them until they get reinstated, right?
Follow-ups. If there's no response at all, obviously we're responsible for getting you an answer. If you're not getting any answers, we get you one.
Yeah.
We're all ex-Amazon on the client-facing side, so we know we work together as well at the company, so we know the dynamics of those appeals paths.
Are you active in the US or worldwide, or especially Europe and Germany?
Yeah, global. Germany, I've been active for the last 2 or 3 years. We've gotten a lot of people reinstated in Germany. I've got a German client in my testimonial section on my site, the ecommercechris.com site, and UK, and some French, some Spanish. So a lot in Europe, US, of course, Australia, New Zealand. I've got clients there, pretty much everywhere at this point. So we end up getting contacts through my website. I've got a contact form on my site. We get them 24 hours a day at this point from everywhere.
Very cool. Chris, thanks so much for this interview. We'll post all the links into the description, ecommercechris.com, and if you want, we can also, if you're on Facebook, we can also link to your Facebook profile. Sure. So guys, look below. This is a good address to save as a bookmark at least, and also maybe rethink your listings and make sure that everything is perfect. You have brand registered and there are no violations.
Think about compliance.
Because preventing problems is the best way of solving them, of course. So thank you, and have a great day. And
no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching, guys. Please press the like button if you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know what you think. Comment down below if you have any questions to Chris or to us, then feel free. Sellerboard, profit analytics for Amazon sellers. We have a free trial. Check out our demo on our website. You don't need to enter any emails or register to see the demo. Basically, you can touch the software without having an account. The link is in the description, sellerboard.com. Good luck to you guys, and see you soon. Bye-bye.